What is going on, y'all? This is Pay Me in Dividends. Back with another video. A little different this time. I'm usually behind the screen, but today we have a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself, all right? So let's get right into it. All right, welcome to the channel. A special guest here on the channel. He talks about stocks as well. He talks about traveling and things like that. He actually just interviewed me on his channel recently, a couple days ago, and now I have him on my channel. So this is Yujin Vasquez, and I will let him introduce himself and just give us a brief rundown on what your life looks like these days, where in the world you're living, and what type of lifestyle you're currently living.
Yeah, sure. So, my story's not that unique. I was working a job. I worked overseas for pretty much the last 8 years, and then I kind of just hit a block. I plateaued. So I was like, you know what? I think I've had my fill. I think I'm done, and I decided to move out here to Thailand. And I've been coming to Thailand since 2019, but I was, I actually quit my job in August 2024, and then moved here officially in, that same year, right, or like a month later or so. So ever since then, I've been just kind of focused on, YouTube. YouTube's been kind of like more of a passion project than anything, and really, it's just a way of me doing something, being able to give back, trying to be a little more selfless, because I grew up, not knowing what the hell investing was. I didn't know what a stock was. I didn't know what a mutual fund was. I didn't know any of this. And I just so happened to like kind of stumble into this like space called the high yield investing space. And it was because of your channel. Like your videos were the first that I seen, because I knew about, these high yield funds even before, but I only knew them as like yield traps or not scams, but basically scams, right? Like nothing's paying out 100% yield. So your channel was what I started with. And then, I kind of just grew up from there. So I started investing in high yield ETFs. I started building, more passive income. My background is primarily in real estate. So a lot of my investing was just in real estate. And then, once I got here, got more settled in, the high yield stuff kind of took a life of its own. My YouTube channel kind of veered off in a whole other direction, because I was supposed to be just a personal finance channel, talking about savings and debt management and, like maybe a little bit of real estate here, maybe a little bit of stocks here, buy index funds, 10% return since 1926, that kind of spiel. But then it's like this channel just took off in a whole other direction. I made one video, and it's just, that's what the audience wanted. The audience wanted more of that type of stuff. So what my life looks like nowadays, I'm pretty much just here in Thailand. I live a boring life. I don't really do a whole lot. I'm mostly just work on the YouTube stuff, because it's just a passion of mine. I enjoy doing it. I spend most of my day just, going through finance news, reading articles, talking with other investors, either, in other communities or even in my own community, or talking, with people in the comments section. Every now and again, I'll probably, travel around a bit here and there, but I'm not really like out and about as much. I live a pretty boring life. So I know a lot of people are always like, when are you coming out with more Thailand content? We want more Thailand content. I mean, guys, like, I love Thailand, but I'm not trying to be a Thailand channel, right? Like maybe I might try to intertwine the two, like finance and expat living or living abroad. I think that's a direction that I might start pursuing. But yeah, that's pretty much me. Again, worked 8 years overseas, saved up a bunch of money, try to invest, made a couple of mistakes here and there. And then, I just saved enough, invested enough where I was able to leave my job and take a break. And now here I am today.
Nice. That is a great explanation. Now, before we get into the investment side of it, I want to ask you, which part of Thailand are you living in? Which parts have you visited, and which one is your favorite?
Oh man, I honestly haven't visited too much. So I mostly stay in the Bangkok area. So like, pretty much the Bangkok area. But I visited, Pattaya, Jomtien area. I've been to Phuket, did the whole PP Island stuff there. On the docket, I want to go to Chiang Mai, go visit that area. I also want to go check out some of the other cooler islands, because there's a lot of other like travel destinations that many people don't go to. They usually go to like the Pattayas or the Phukets or the Chiang Mai's, but there's all these like little areas within Thailand that I can go visit that I just haven't. But I think starting next year I'm going to do a little more traveling, so that'll be perfect for the channel. But a little more traveling, maybe even visit Bali or Vietnam or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at here in Thailand.
Awesome. So it seems like you still have a little more to explore, but you've been living here for a little over a year now, right? So
Yeah. So I moved here the end of August of 2024. So yeah, about a year and change now.
Awesome. So for anybody who's watching these type of videos and anticipating a move to Southeast Asia, we'll say Thailand specifically, since that's where your personal experience comes from. How much monthly income should somebody anticipate to spend in order to not just survive here, but to thrive and be 100% self-sufficient? I know there's a lot of videos that talk about living in Thailand for $1,000 a month, live like a king for $500 a month. I don't think people realize how developed a lot of parts in Thailand are and how good the infrastructure is in a lot of parts. And the cost of living can reflect that. It is a lot more affordable than Western countries, but realistically, or kind of on a practical level, how much can one, let's say you're single, no children, you're just by yourself, single adult, man or woman, how much should somebody anticipate to spend on a monthly basis?
That's a really good question. There's too many videos out there that purport or give this like false, like narrative, like, oh, you only need $2,000 a month, like that's easy, or $1,500. That is out the window. Maybe like 5 years ago that was possible, but especially if you're living here in Bangkok, like $1,500 will get you just to live. Like you'll be eating like 7-Eleven every day, right? You're not going to be eating restaurant food or going out to the bars or partying or traveling or, so when people ask me that question, it's going to vary, right? If you're a single person, you're a bachelor, female, male, doesn't matter. You're going to want, in my opinion, you're going to want more than $2,500 a month, probably $3,000. If not, you should probably double that, if anything, right? To be perfectly honest, because you're gonna overspend some months, right? You're gonna find a nice condo. The condos are cheap for what they offer. Like you get pools, you get freaking gyms, you get all that stuff. Living, the actual cost of living is very affordable, right? But it's all the extra stuff that comes with it. Going out, buying clothes, paying for electricity, cell phone bills, traveling, taking Bolts everywhere. If you want to eat at like an American restaurant, like say Subway or Burger King or Pizza Hut or something like that, that's going to run you some real money. But if you're going to be eating like the food stalls every day or, doing your 7-Eleven runs, you can survive off much less. But again, it's really what the individual wants. Because if you're going to be, again, going to the bars, networking, meeting up with other people, maybe a weekend trip to the patios, right? You're gonna want some more money. Now, if you're a family, you got your boyfriend, girlfriend type of deal, you're gonna need way more. I mean, just flat out, you're gonna need more. If you have kids in the mix, you're gonna need more. Everything here is affordable. Like even health, health, like doctors, hospitals, that kind of stuff. Even that's very affordable. Dentists, very affordable. But again, I don't think the notion of the $2,000 a month is enough anymore. Bangkok is, or Thailand in general, a lot of the touristy spots, they're starting to develop. They got, I don't know, they have a lot of like money coming in, and they've even had these meetings where they don't want like the back, or what do they call it, the not the backpacker, but the back beggar, where you'll have like the really like cheap tourists come here and then they start begging on the streets. Like they don't want that. They want the people who are going to be long term. They're going to be bringing in money, or they're going to have money. Like they want those types of people. So the days of like the $2,000 a month, yeah, I think that's over. To be perfectly honest, even for an individual, you could get by, but $2,000 a month. I mean, for a single guy, young, you're going to want to party. You're going to want to go out. You're going to want to buy stuff. So I think you should budget for at least $3,000, to be honest.
Okay, so I mean that's a great answer, and I think that's very informative for anybody looking to live this type of lifestyle. You know, it's 2025. Expenses go up every
Yep.
year, right? Naturally, you know, there's inflation and things like that. And I don't think the notion of just having $500 a month or $1,000 a month is really going to cut it. Not if you want to live a good quality life, but you can still do it a lot more affordable. So it's still a lot more affordable than the U.S. and those types of countries. So that's really good information. Now, I want to switch gears to more of the investing part of it. So, for anybody who watches Eugene's channel, he is very transparent with his brokerage account. You can see exactly how much money he has invested, how much money he makes on a weekly basis from dividend income. What is your current strategy? I'm assuming that you're using that dividend income to pay for your expenses and you have a surplus of income in order to continue growing. What do you think your strategy looks like 5 years from now, assuming that the high yield ETFs continue to be a trend? I think many ETF managers, with all of the competition that's out now with Roundhill and Yieldmax and all these other ETF managers, there's going to be new ETFs. I don't see it going anywhere. If anything, it'll become very saturated, which is great for investors because it gives us more options. So where do you see your portfolio in about 5 years from now as far as principal growth and income? Is there a certain monthly income number that you're striving for? And what does that look like for you?
Man, that's an amazing question. That's a really good question. So, let me start at the beginning. So, I'm using some of my distribution income to live off of, right? Hey, your brother got bills to pay, right? I got things I got to pay for, right? So I do use some of the distributions to actually live off of. Now, to take it back even further, you know, a lot of people are worried like, oh, these might be going away soon. Like this is insane that they're giving you this much money back or yield or distributions. And to that I say, like, through research, a lot of these covered call funds, like, these are not new. These have been around for a very long time, but they've only been allowed through institutions or for very high net worth individuals. You know, that's who those were catered for. And now retail has access to them. So I'm not too worried about those going away. So for the next, if any change is going to happen, it's going to be to the distribution. It's going to be from return of capital to probably ordinary income. Uncle Sam can't be, you know, without getting his little cut. So that's just my thought, my little conspiracy thought. But as far as where the portfolio is going to be going in 5 years, you know, right now I'm making enough to be comfortable and to be able to reinvest money back into the portfolio, so I get to keep on investing, which is something I really like to do. So that I'm happy with, right? With the amount of distribution income I'm making, and I get to reinvest some of that back in, and the portfolio is growing. I see my portfolio probably evolving more so back to growth. Because right now, you know, I was focused solely on making some type of income, you know, generating either through cover call ETFs or whatever, high yield ETFs, you have swap agreements, you have leverage ETFs, right? But now that I'm making a distribution amount, I forget how much. I think I'm like at 12 grand a month, you know, 12 grand. Return of capital, your own money back, right?
Yep.
Now that I'm making that, like, now I want to put that money into growth assets. Just like we were talking with you, you know, it's funny, a lot of people are starting to realize, like, they can't have a whole portfolio full of income generating, you know, ETFs. They have to include growth, or else their portfolio is always going to be underperforming. So, you know, luckily I kind of got ahead of that, and I always had this idea in my head, you know, the core satellite approach, to always have some type of growth in the portfolio. So now it's just a matter of, you know, extracting that value from the distribution and then, you know, tactically allocating it over time to growth ETFs. So, you know, over the next 5 years, that's kind of what my strategy is going to be. You know, I'm comfortable now. I'll continue investing in high yield ETFs. I like this space. It's fun. It's exciting. It's new. There's new products coming out almost every other week. New ETFs dropping almost every other week. It's a very exciting space. So now, you know, once that is pretty much stabilized, I suppose, now I'm going to start moving some of the money back into growth ETFs.
Gotcha. Okay. So another question I have specific to your portfolio is I notice you have several different single stock ETFs, right? Like the Robinhood Brownhill HOOW. You have the Palantir one from
Yeah.
Robinhill. You have the MicroStrategy one from
Round
Brownhill.
Yep.
Um, so as you transition into more growth into the future while still holding on to some income, do you see yourself moving some of those single stock ETFs into a more indexed ETF that still pays a dividend, like a QQQI or a what's the new one they came out with? WPay.
Yeah, WPay from Round Hill. Yep.
WPay, something a bit more diversified that still kicks out income, but you're not relying on one individual company, because I suspect that in 5 years from now, Robinhood may not be as hot of a stock. Maybe it'll kind of
It'll fizzle out.
reach
Yep,
its peak,
Yep.
have its Nvidia moment, and then kind of find its footing. So, do you see yourself transitioning to more of an index-based income ETF, or just a growth ETF that doesn't really pay much of a dividend, and just kind of allocating a smaller portion to the income side of the portfolio?
That's you're saying exactly what I have been thinking about this whole time. It's like, how do you look at these single stock ETFs? They're not going to ride high forever. At some point, they're going to fizzle out and trade flat, or even trade down, right? Maybe a competitor completely blows Nvidia out the water. Maybe MicroStrategy, is no longer the top dog anymore, or maybe Robinhood also, trades flat or down or something, right? So you're absolutely right. And what I've been toying with in my head is taking the distributions and adding it back into the core positions, right? Adding it into like your index cover call ETFs, adding it into something like a WPay, where a WPay is, you're going to get a little more upside, you're going to get that growth because of the leverage. You have, some really decent holdings in there, but you're also going to get some type of income, right? Some type of distribution income. I have liked that strategy. It's just timing is everything, right? You don't want to try to time the market, but at some point, you're right. These ETFs, these underliers, they're going to lose favor, right? Some new players are going to come into the space. They're not going to be all that more important. They're going to fizzle out. At that point, I have to probably sell out of these ETFs and move the money into index funds, or cover call index funds, or income producing index funds of some sort. I like the WPay. It holds pretty much the Mag 7 plus some other momentum stocks or volatile stocks. So I think that's a good good play for the long term if they continue adding these other ETFs, these other underliers to the WPay series. So yeah, to answer the question, I say all that to answer the question is, at some point, yes, these single stock ETFs will go the way of the dodo, and I'll just reallocate the money into like index-based, income instruments. I'll probably divvy up the money, just knowing myself, I'll probably divvy it up. Some money goes into, index-based cover call ETFs or income-producing ETFs. The other will probably go to like growth, or maybe individual stocks that I see have way more upside potential. So that is exactly what I think a lot of people are going to be struggling with in the coming years after this AI boom is done and over with.
Okay, so it sounds like you're taking advantage of the current kind of AI tech moment, which is great as an investor because you can really grow your portfolio and then eventually transition into more index and growth. So the next question I want to ask you is, I want to go to real estate. I want to touch on it very quickly because we spoke about it in our video a couple days ago on your channel. And I want to get a little bit of background on your real estate experience and what made you transition to more of a dividend approach. For obvious reasons, it complements your lifestyle, being overseas and whatnot. So if you just want to touch on that a little bit and just give us a quick background on your real estate experience and how that transition came to be over to dividend investing.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to, because I think this is important, especially for a lot of real estate investors. There's like this extreme. It's like you're either a real estate investor or you're a stock investor. There's very little people in between. I will say I started off with real estate. right? Buying single family homes, that kind of deal, high barriers to entry. There's a lot of risk on the table because, if you're going to buy a property, your name's on that property, your credit, you have credit risk, you have your money's tied up, that kind of stuff. So again, I started with real estate, and then I eventually hit this moment where I realized, because I was on this plan, it was like buy one house a year for 10 years. Each house is $100,000, right? I'm putting $25,000 of my own money down. So within 10 years, I should have $250,000 of equity, but $1 million portfolio producing maybe, a couple $1,000 a month, right? What they don't tell you in these real estate courses or these real estate videos is that there's a lot that can go wrong. A tenant can sue you, a tenant cannot pay rent for 6 months, a pandemic, can wipe away your cash flow for over 2 years. You can have a fire at your house, a garage door can break, and it'll completely wipe out your year's cash flow. A tenant moves out and destroys the place, so you are basically back at zero. So a lot can happen with real estate. And at some point, I realized, like, I'm not going to be able to scale, because net worth, these real estate investors, they'll say, oh, I'm a $2-3 million net worth, but really they use a lot of debt, right? At the end of the day, the thing that matters the most is cash flow. You could be net worth rich, asset rich, but cash flow poor, right? You're not making any real money. So I came to this conclusion and decided that I started selling my single properties, my residential properties, and moving them into REITs, right? Real estate investment trusts. So that was my goal. Like REITs, I love REITs. Fantastic vehicles, excellent exposure to the real estate sector. I even invested in real estate syndications. So, I invested in these, basically large apartment complexes, just like the one behind me, right? But again, the same kind of deal. There's sponsor risk, there's market risk, there's risk of the debt markets, interest rate risk, all that stuff plays a factor. Whereas money in a REIT, you have not only diversification, but you have scale, right? You're not getting phone calls from your REIT that someone just cooked a bunch of meth in your home, right? That's one. Two, you're not going to get a stopped distribution unless the entire REIT is doing bad, right? That's another one. And then, eventually, I just decided to move into like more higher dividend paying, stocks or high yield ETFs, because again, it's like the cash flow, the cash velocity is much quicker. You can get your return much quicker than in real estate. Real estate's very slow. The returns on real estate can be far greater than the returns in the stock market, but again, there's a lot of risk. Just like there's a lot of risk with stocks, you could have one guy tweet something and then the entire stock market take a 30% dip, right? So I kind of made that switch after I realized that I wanted to scale. I wasn't going to be able to scale with rental properties. It would have took too long. And not only that, living overseas, you need cash flow. You can't extract equity out of a property like that, right? It takes paperwork, it takes time, it takes a month. So I moved all into stocks. I'm moving all into stocks and high yield ETFs, at least for now. I'm still in, a couple real estate syndications. I might continue, investing in real estate, but for right now where I'm at, I just want to limit my exposure. But I think, the real estate market is at that pivot moment right now. 3-year bear market, they've been down, interest rates have been high. Now interest rates are coming down. Whoever's buying at this bottom, they're going to benefit. So it's just my thoughts on that. But yeah, that's how I made the transition and why I've moved to real estate. Liquidity, flexibility, in and out of positions whenever you want. You could save your cash flow versus it being locked up in a property for months.
Okay.
Yeah, so to answer your question about, where, are younger people going to be, involved, in cover call ETFs? Are they going to start exposing themselves to more income-based ETFs? That's a great question, because I think right now a lot of income investors are starting to learn that, again, like either they're not at the right age group to be worried about income, or that it's going to take a lot of money in order to produce any type of real distribution. Because you need an account of like 100,000, to be honest, 50 to 100,000 to make any type of real money off of a cover call ETF or an income ETF. So I don't think younger investors should be solely focused on that. I think, the younger investors need to be focused more on growth. They need to be putting their money to work in faster growing assets. Now later, let's say they build up a cash pile in like 100, 150,000 or 300 or etc. Then maybe they could take a small slice of that, 10% of their portfolio, maybe even less than that, and dump it into a cover call ETF to produce some type of income. But again, you got to think, most of these income assets, they don't outperform the underliers in most cases. So it makes no sense to be putting your money as a younger investor into something like an NVIDIA cover call ETF where you're going to underperform and you're not going to be using the cash for anything, right? It doesn't make any sense in my opinion. I think it makes more sense, where you reach a certain threshold. Let's say you had a $400,000, $500,000 portfolio and you're like, you want to take a sabbatical for a year. You want to take some time off. Well, you could sell shares of that index and or those ETFs and then make your income that way. Or you could have some of that money, put it into a cover call ETF or an income ETF, a high yield ETF, and then use that money for whatever, travel or something else. I think that is probably more prudent, and investors are not going to implode their portfolios by doing that. There's a margin of safety there, as long as a lot of their money is still in like some stable assets, some index funds or something like that where they're still growing. Man, someone's riding their bike like crazy. Or it's those Grab drivers, man.
We're in Thailand.
Yeah, it's those Grab drivers, man. Damn, bro. Sorry, I lost my thought. Or, as they age, they can move some of their money into like the income instruments and then, maybe take a sabbatical, come out here to Thailand, come out to Philippines, wherever, travel the world. I don't know. I don't care. Go to the club, spend your OT dividend, right? Whatever you want to do. I think, honestly, because it's happening now, a lot of investors are figuring out, who are, probably my age or more, that they don't even need the income. The high yields are, you get that quick dopamine hit. You're getting paid weekly, monthly, twice a week, whatever it is, but they're realizing like you don't need that money and they could be using that money for something more productive. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on who should be looking at these instruments.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's do a test run, right? Let's assume somebody has a portfolio of, let's go with $150,000, and they can only choose 3 ETFs to invest into, $50K a piece. And let's assume that they want to generate enough income to live in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, one of these more affordable countries. Which 3 ETFs that are active on the market right now would you do hypothetically if you were transitioning into this overseas lifestyle?
So if you have 150K, right, and you need 3 ETFs, so 150K just off of let's say a 50% distribution yield, right? So we're gonna go with 50%. So that's gonna imply that there's some growth in this ETF. All right, so 50%, so that's about $75,000 a year, right? But we need to split it into 3 ETFs. Let's see. That's a hard question. So for 50,000, in order to generate easily 50,000, I would put it into an ETF that can generate at least 50%, right? So you get that 25,000 easy, right? Easy. I would look at something like maybe an XPay, to be honest, a target distribution ETF that's going to pay you 20% on your money. It's targeted, so it's not promised, no guarantee, but at least you'll have a 20% yielder. Another 50 can go into something a little more higher risk, maybe something like a cover call ETF from Yieldmax or Granite Shares, the yield boosts, where they're paying out 100% distribution yield, or maybe a 75% distribution yield. I would go for something like that. Yeah, I would go for something like that. So that's 50,000 there. So combined with XPay and with some other cover call high yielding ETF, I mean, you're looking at easily 50 to 60,000 right there. That's what, $2,000-3,000 a month, if that. That's a little more actually. I think it's like $4,000 a month right there. And then the last 50,000, I would definitely put it into some type of an index, right? Some type of an index. I'd probably do maybe something like a QQQI, but I would keep drip on. I would keep the money reinvesting because I want to grow that, and that's going to be my safety net in case something goes bad with the other ETFs. But again, something like XPay, it's a cover call ETF on the index. I mean, you got safety there. It's not like the index is going to drop another 30% unless a black swan event happens. It might pull back here and there, but you're not going to have like a dramatic 30% drop like a single stock ETF. So yeah, that's how I'd split it up. 2 indexes, cover call types, 1 target, 1 not, and then the last one could be your high yielding, your ultra yield ETF. Something in like a yield boost product or a cover call product, or if you want to take the risk, you could even do like the leverage products from like Roundhill. But yeah, that's kind of how I would construct a portfolio. Not financial advice, of course. I'm not recommending people just do this unless they want to see their capital erode or vanish in front of them. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you definitely got to do your own research when it comes to any type of investing. But the reason I asked that question is basically the conclusion that I've came to is you can live this lifestyle at a much cheaper price than people think. Now, that was a hypothetical example with $150,000, which is a lot of money, but it's not an unrealistic goal that people can hit at a relatively young age. I don't think you need to work 30, 40 years into your 60s to achieve that type of nest egg for yourself. It's going to take a little bit of sacrifice and things like that. So that was really the part that I wanted to highlight, is the fact that you can do it a lot cheaper than people think.
And I want to add on, like, it doesn't, like, that money, you have to think, like, there is risk that money might disappear tomorrow, right? It could potentially disappear. Let's just be honest. There's investing risk. But what that gives you is runway. It gives you some type of passive income so you could focus on doing something else, right? Let's say you want to pursue your passion doing YouTube or teaching a course or something, right? I don't know. Weaving baskets and selling them on Etsy. What that could do, that 150K can do, is provide some type of runway for you so you can focus on that and then geo arbitrage into a low cost of living country. So then it gives you even more runway to focus on what you're trying to do. I mean, that's essentially what I did. I'm geo arbitraging a low cost of living area so I could focus on my passion. Because if I was in the United States, I'd be spending 5, 6, 7 grand a month just to live, right? Paying rent, car, insurance, cell phone bill, living, expenses. I mean, I'd be paying a lot. But by living in Thailand, I can stretch that money much further. So I just wanted to make that point as well, because I think it's super important. You could do it with cheaper money, but it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. We don't know what the future holds for any of these ETFs. So I think it's prudent to look for another alternative source of income.
Absolutely. And we've seen that on your channel as well. You've been very transparent with your investments. You've really grown your YouTube channel as well. You're around, 7,500 subscribers currently. And I've seen the growth since you were less than 1,000 subscribers, and now you're 7,500 subscribers. So I'm assuming that you are doubling down on the YouTube channel, looking to find other ways to incorporate some type of business through your YouTube. And you have a lot of time to do it because you're unemployed, right?
Yep,
so you're
happily.
working for yourself. And I think that's the beautiful thing. So you started YouTube while you were still working, I believe? Okay, so you were posting when you were still working. How did that transition from leaving your last job, how did that transition give you more time or accessibility to work on YouTube? And does that time sometimes seem daunting? Like you may get complacent. So do you find yourself getting complacent with all of the free time that you have now, or has it actually motivated you to double down on business because now you feel like you have a little more control under your time?
So I was trying to start this business, you know, this YouTube business, I suppose, when I was working, but it's just the job took away all my time. I mean, I had time on the weekends to work on it, but that was it. And I mean, you try to shuffle things around, it never worked out, right? Um, so I will say, like, now that I'm free from the system, free from the matrix, the shock was coming up with your own schedule. I'm a very structured individual. I try to be, and I wanted to be more regimented. So I actually came out with, you know, a couple non-negotiables that I talked about on my channel like some time ago. And it's basically like all these things I need to hit every single day. You know, going to the gym, posting a video, researching a video, eating clean, whatever it is. Waking up at 5:30, waking up at 6, whatever in the morning. I try to stay as productive as possible because that's where I find like the most happiness for me. Like I like to work, I like to be busy, I like to do productive things that's progressing my own goals. So that is, you know, how I was able to kind of stay away from the complacency. The problem with that is, you know, sometimes that impacts me because I like staying busy, I like working, I like working on my own stuff. So then that makes me ignore some of the other personal relationships I have, so it's a double-edged sword is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, the biggest shock was when I left and it's like there's no schedule. It's completely blank. So you as an individual, you have to be super disciplined in setting up your day and sticking to it. You know, having your goals written down. I know this sounds cheesy as hell, but I have all my goals written down for the year. How many YouTube videos I want to make, how many subscribers I want to get to, you know, what kind of business model I want to make, how much revenue I want to generate, how much investment income I want to make, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like I have all this stuff written down, and this I look at it often, and this is what keeps me on track to stop or to keep me from being complacent. So yeah, I will say that's to defeat that, you have to have goals and you have to make sure you're tracking and holding yourself accountable to that.
Gotcha. Okay, so overall, it seems like you're living a pretty good life out here in Thailand. You got your, investments working for you. You're living in a beautiful country, great cost of living, great weather. Are there any other countries that you would consider living in that you visited before? Is Thailand kind of your home indefinitely? Will this always kind of be your base? And where do you see yourself living a year from now? Do you still see yourself in Thailand?
So I still see myself living in Thailand, but this is not the end all be all. I don't want to say I'm going to always stay here. I'm like I mentioned earlier, this is more so of a geo arbitrage opportunity. I always wanted to live here and give it a shot, you know, see what life is like. It's like, okay, I did that already. Now what, right? But I wanted to live here to experience it, you know, be closer, to some of the action out here. Where I see myself in a couple of years, I have no idea, to be honest, as far as like where I'll be living. I do want to check out, Bali. I do want to check out Vietnam. Vietnam's having its Thailand moment where a lot of nomads or digital nomads, remote workers are all starting to move to Vietnam because it's way cheaper. So who knows? As far as advice, for people who are thinking about this type of lifestyle, where to look, I'd say research and make sure you have enough money to last you. I've seen so many people come here to Thailand, and they have to leave because they don't have that income, coming in or generating enough, right? So I would say that's the number one thing. It's not the visa stuff. The visa you can find a way around. You can get your visas legally, of course. You can find your way through that. But it's always the income, the cash flow, the bank account that gets depleted and then sends people packing. They come here with big audacious goals to start a company, start a drop shipping company, whatever, AI agency, a marketing agency, and then they end up packing their bags and going home because they didn't think about the cash flow, right? Or generating some type of cash. So I would say that. So yeah, I think people should take the jump. They should take the opportunity, of course, do your diligence on all this stuff. But I think people should shoot for the stars, take that risk. Worst case scenario, you can always go back to a job, right? So.
Gotcha. All right, that's great information. I think we're going to wrap this one up, but That was a lot of great information. I hope we can collaborate some more in the future. Maybe we'll go live soon or do something like that. And maybe even another follow up to this type of lifestyle, being that you're actually living it in real life. You've been living here over a year, so you have a lot of information to provide to people. So if there's anything that you'd like to say before we get out of here, if you want to promote your YouTube channel or anything else.
Oh yeah,
to the
guys,
people.
you can find me on YouTube. It's my name, Yujin Vasquez. You can check my website out in case you guys are interested in any type of coaching or if you want to join our Discord. We have a free open Discord. Outside of that, I just the last piece of advice, and I already mentioned it again. I think people should take risks, and I'm not saying with your money, but I'm saying with taking a risk and betting on yourself. I think people should do that. Worst case scenario, you can always go back to a job, all right? But when you have the sky is the limit, that is the truth. The sky literally is the limit. It's however hard you work and all the effort you put in, you will be rewarded for that, right? But you got to put in that work. So that's my parting words.
All right, Eugene, that was great. That was motivation right there, man. So, yeah, that's it, guys. We're going to wrap this up. You guys let us know in the comments any questions you have about investing, covered call ETFs, living abroad, and how that can be done. You guys let us know in the comments. As always, I appreciate you stopping by the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.